It's a great honor and pleasure to introduce Diana Slattery, who was born in time to compile a full 60s resume. Civil rights photojournalism, peace marching, cults and communes. Social justice, self-exploration, and LSD went hand in hand for Diana. She went on to co-found an ecologically oriented K-12 school with a working farm, dairy, livestock, and forestry that held the first renewable energy conference in Oregon. She later continued her career by founding, funding, and managing a series of not-for-profit organizations. In 1999, in an altered state of consciousness, she acquired a strange alien script, Glide, beginning a 10-year psychonautic investigation of linguistic phenomena in the psychedelic sphere. Out of this solo and secret adventure came a novel, The Maze Game. 1 million words of session reports, software to work with the language, and a PhD in Xenolinguistics. Diana lives in California and has presented her work at numerous art, technology, consciousness, and psychedelic conferences over the past 15 years. Welcome, Diana. Thank you. Woo! Thank you
so much for this.
So happy to have you.
Yeah,
blessing.
So, do I have the microphone pretty much okay? All right. I am so happy to be here, but I'm so almost over-energized right now from hearing these incredible presentations and seeing the cinematography and photography of Republic of Light and Sarah's talk about the crying need for initiation in our culture. And Magenta, of course, is out there reorganizing and resystematizing the universe. And I can only say get behind that action and in it and with it in the middle of it. So I'm going to talk, my talk is sort of organized around the book I just published, which is the result of all that series of things that Natalie just mentioned. And the book is Xenolinguistics. And I'm sorry, we don't have them for sale tonight. I'd love to, but we ran out. And I'm also going to talk about the book, The Maze Game, which is really the underpinning. It's the invisible underpinning of this more nonfiction book. This is the fictional working out of that glide language. So today's a big anniversary. It's the 44th anniversary of the experiment at La Chorrera. How many people know what that is? Come on, more. Wow, okay. This is Terence and Dennis McKenna's giant experiment in citizen science, which was wild and crazy and steered essentially the rest of both of their life work. And it had a great influence on my work. So just to define xenolinguistics, in science fiction it's used as a study of alien languages, and I've sort of co-opted the term to talk about the linguistic phenomena that some people experience in psychedelic and other kinds of altered states. So linguistics is the study of natural languages, xenolinguistics is the study of unnatural languages. And I consider myself a proud member of the Starfleet Academy. Here's our initial image of a xenolinguist. Whoops. Sorry. I missed Uhuru. No, she's next. So anyhow, xenolinguistics is most often portrayed as women's work. And those are some of the references in some excellent science fiction. And I find that kind of interesting. Always the xenolinguists turn out to be women when fictionally portrayed. There she is, Uhura. Dig the costume, okay? Dig the big hair. So, citizen science. There's a differentiation made in our culture between authorized science, which is the scientific paradigm, and all the institutions and fundings and publications that go along with that, and citizen science, which is what all the rest of us do. And SETI is one of the obvious examples, but there's a million different kinds of data collection and all kinds of projects that people are doing on their own. And I consider xenolinguistics kind of this, a similar thing, but more broadly, psychedelic self-exploration and group exploration, when it is done to to bring back to share with the community, as everyone's been saying tonight. And that is science in the broader sense. It's investigation. It's truth to the experience that you've had and the communication thereof. And so in psychedelic research, I believe there's a great deal more citizen science going on than authorized science. And that's not in any way to put down authorized science, because that's a whole spearhead into our culture. So, I know this is partly a CIIS and academic crowd. How do you turn citizen science, even outlaw science, which is kind of what I was doing, into academic research? And I would just want to point to a strategy, which is one I used, which is the practice-based or practice-led dissertation. And the link there is a wonderful set of resources for learning about that kind of thing if an academic pursuit is part of your plans. So the stages of the research that I did are listed there, and I don't think I have to read them back to you. And the end result started with this, and that was the subject of the initial download. Was the entire the entire story, how the language played a part, what I should do, all the software I should build, and this final book. It was all there in about a split second. So, but it took me 15 years to unpack it all and to get to this point. And as I was just saying to someone, it's like I've been working pretty much in solitude or very quietly by myself with a small community, and now it's like being out in the public, and it's quite an experience. So, for a dyed-in-the-wool introvert like myself. So the maze game. I'm just going to read you a little passage from the maze game, because that's really about the magical, mythical origins of the glide language, and it really helped me to understand it. So the maze game that became the unifying force of life or civilization emerged from the bottom muck of a vast lily pond. The plantation blue lilies stretched for miles, almost the width of the delta, where the river Wine opened its arms to meet the sea. When the tide was in, they floated on the water. When the tide went out, they rested on the mud. The pollen of the giant blue water lilies distilled into a powerful and pricey hallucinogen, the wine of the lilies. Harvesting the pollen was a delicate task. The lily pads, large as they were, could not support the weight of an adult human body. The omnivorous lily had a reflex of tipping potential food into the water to be tangled into the roots and absorbed. Plantation Blue's sole proprietor was a very large drug duke named Doreen the Unbearable. One day Doreen bought an odd lot of flawed inventory from a body shop. Their child-sized bodies, rejected as too small to lift heavy things and too smart, potential troublemakers, for housework, were ideal for his specialized harvesting. Their rapid and efficient motion from lily pad to lily pad gave them their name, glides. The glides not only harvested, they cross-pollinated, improving the lily and delighting his unbearableness, Doreen. The lily expressed its gratitude by teaching the glides a secret, silent language. Breathing the raw pollen day after day, the glides listened as the lily bespoke itself through 3 shapes based on the gestures of their cupped hands at work, curved up as they scooped the pollen, curved down as they emptied their palms into the baskets, and joined together in the gesture of the wave. So glide really, in its fictional context, began as a gestural language. So here's some of the interfaces from some of the software that I built with the help of wonderful student programmers. And the first thing was a lexicon, which was an attempt to translate these glyphs. The second was a piece called the Collabyrinth, which is a glide editor where you can animate them and put them together in mazes. And it also had a means to do this online, so you could join together with someone else and fool around with the language online. And the third is one that I still use, which is Live Glide, which is a 3-dimensional interface for, it's essentially live video performance software that uses the glyphs and moves the 2-dimensional glyphs through 3 space, attaching a lot of texture, motion, animation to them. And then the current thing that I've been working with is the Glide Oracle, which is available on iPad, and as of yesterday, it's available on the iPhone, and it's free for the next several days, so if you want it, and you have a smartphone like that, by all means, I won't be at all insulted if you all grab your smartphones right now and download it, but it's free. From the Apple App Store. Oh, I'm sorry. It's called the Glide Oracle for iPhone. Sorry. So as I developed an online presence about this work, which I did very slowly because I had a whole lot of closet issues. For one, I was working at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which is not an entheogenic friendly environment, and being funded largely by the military, I think. And so I had to really be careful of what I said to who. The fact that I was doing my own private entheogenic research was not something that it would have been okay to talk to students about. So anyhow, it took me a while to work through those issues and start to come out of the closet. So, I'm going to now spend some time introducing you to some of the incredible people that I've met who have encountered these phenomena and done work with them of all different sorts. And I call them the Guild of Xenolinguists, which is a term I got from a science fiction writer named Sheila Finch, who lovingly agreed that it would be okay for me to use that. And she wrote a book called The Guild of Xenolinguists, in which the way that translation with aliens took place was people were trained, and mostly women, on Earth with dolphins and psychedelics. This might remind you of John Lilly. And they went out into the galaxy, accompanying explorations, and used, taking along their kit of psychedelic substances, which they knew how to choose which one to use in which situation with which kind of alien. Anyhow, it's pretty fascinating. So Alison Gray, you're probably all familiar with her work, and here's what she has to say. She was kind enough to write the foreword to this book, and it's really quite incredible. It talks about Judaism and the people of the Word and her own work and her origins in her xenolinguistic work. This is Allison's words. Secret writing first appeared to me in 1971 during an LSD trip in my tiny Cambridge college room. After having just read the book, Remember, Be Here Now, I shared identical hits of The Sacrament with two high school friends who had also just read the same popular book that had been recently released. In the book, Ram Dass, a former Jewish psychiatrist, recounts seeing the white light during an acid trip that led to his spiritual opening. Inspired by his discoveries, my friends and I sought the heart of the mystery. Deep into the trip, letter forms and symbols from a language I did not recognize became visible, skimming the surfaces of all the objects in the room. Washing over the faces and figures, an array of secret symbols floated like infinite ribbons in midair and rimming the edges and surfaces of everything in this room. This secret writing communicated the ineffable in a spectral, glowing array of light. Their meaning was holy and precious, unpronounceable and ineffable. This is one she did in collaboration with her husband, Alex. This one is Chaos and Order and Secret Writing. And this is the Jewel Net of Indra, which came out of this work. And there's Allison. So I threw in a little bit of Jung here because I came to CIIS, and I love this quote. Everything in our experience is subject to the law of gravity with one great exception, the psyche, which as we experience it is weightlessness itself. And this came from his book on flying saucers, and he actually did a whole lot of investigation and thinking about what were these images and what were these experiences that people were having. So I included a couple illustrations from the Red Book because his pictures there are full of these interesting untranslatable scripts that came from his visionary experience. And if you look at the glyphs on this man's costume, they might remind you of some of Allison's work. The next group are a couple named Caroline and Gaetan Cottereau-Murray, and they call their work Skin Bridge. Among their projects as the art collaborative Artifist, Caroline and Gaetan Cottereau-Murray kept to a 6-day-per-week diet of Perganum harmala for a year, during which Caroline designed and tattooed Gaetan's back using neuromediators such as pinolene and ayahuasca under the pigments. The work includes a temple floor plan, a fierce bird, and a twisting serpentine form covered with language and symbolic forms. They discovered that each neuromediator has a specific signature of fluorescence under black light. There's the full original drawing. And here's some details from that tattoo, from the drawing that they did the tattoo from. And I met them in Norway, and Gaetan at a conference called Consciousness Reframed, and they talked about this research, and I was dying to see this this tattoo, and so Gaetan was there. So we're up in the cafe talking. I said, could I see the tattoo? And he was just took his shirt right off and showed everybody in the cafe. It was fabulous. So, embodiments of the creative. And there they are. So this is John Dee. This is going back a ways. Dee immersed himself in the worlds of magic, astrology, and Hermetic philosophy, as well as science. He devoted much time and effort in the last 30 or so years of his life to attempting to commune with angels in order to learn the universal language of creation and bring about the pre-apocalyptic unity of mankind. Now here's a guy who thought big. I mean, they ended up going around to all the courts of Europe with his somewhat shady partner, Edward Kelly, and scamming a lot of the powers that be. But anyhow, he was serious about his work. Dee did not draw distinctions between his mathematical research and his investigations into Hermetic magic, angel summoning, and divination. Instead, he considered all of his activities to constitute different facets of the same quest, the search for a transcendent understanding of the divine forms which underlie the visible world, which Dee called pure verities. That's his famous monad, a symbol that Terence McKenna was quite enraptured with. And here's his Enochian language, which was the angelic language that they downloaded. And here's a completely different kind of situation. Dina Larson developed her Rose language when she was a homeless teenager trying to go to school, and she was writing her experiences in a journal, and she had to hide her journals like under steps in front of houses and bushes in the park and wherever she could, and she wanted to write a secret language. She needed a stealth language, and she developed this Rose language. And there's Dina. Dennis Moskowitz is a computer programmer who developed a language called Rikchik, which he imagined as belonging to many tentacled alien beings. And what he was really after, though, was a serious linguistic project, which was how do you develop a speechless orthography? In other words, a writing that essentially translates a sign language done by 7 tentacles of an alien being. There it is. And he can tell you about this in unbelievable detail. This is the morphines of Rikchik. He has a website, of course. And this is a statement, Fight Linguistic Extinction, Invent a Language, by David Peterson in his Kamakawi language. He's developed several languages. He's part of the Language Creation Society. And he's also the developer of, I don't know if any of you are Game of Thrones fans or whatever, but he developed the Dothraki language that is used in that TV show. Glenn English developed something called DMT language, about which he will say absolutely nothing. So here are the pictures. This is right after he came back from a journey. And there's the whole symbol system there. And then there's that Slattery woman who would glide. Here's a picture of, that's some of the notebooks that developed over this 10-year period. There were also a lot of drawings, and this is one of the, I've been drawing these kind of wave-like drawings for a long time, and realized that glide is completely a language of waves. It's just an abstraction from waves. This is just one page from all of those notebooks, but it it kind of shows you what happens in high-dose psilocybin session when the the desire to create curvilinear lines is trying to overpower the natural language in which I was trying to report the experience as it went along. Okay. So this is one of the ways to play with the language, which is to make mazes out of it. And you can see a lot of wavy motion, both in the individual glyphs and then the waves when you combine them into mazes, kind of flow through the maze as a whole. This was an early lexicon in English and Chinese. And this is just one is a still from Live Glide. And so is that. And this is how I've performed it. It's my favorite way to perform it is with a hemispherical projector in a dome environment with people lying down very relaxed on the floor and looking upwards. So, the I Ching. Glide and the McKenna's Time Wave Zero both are related to the I Ching in ways that were developed completely independently. Both of us found a connection to the mathematics and the forms of the I Ching, and each came up with an extrapolation of the I Ching. I went into a ternary form, going from the binary of the I Ching into a ternary form. Terence McKenna went into playing with the mathematics of time wave zero and the King, which came out of his manipulations of the King-Wen sequence. This gives you an idea of sort of the fractal nature of the construction of the universe, from the great Tai Chi, right there, of the original unity into the breaking into two, the dualities, into four, and finally you get up to the 64 hexagrams. And this is a different representation of the same idea. But the great Tai Chi sign is also, it fell out of the glide glyphs as I was writing them down, and it was just a natural part of that system, and it's already implicit in all of the I Ching is this ternary system, because you can see the different, here's the one, half the circle, the other half of the circle, and here's the wave glyph. So there's the three different strokes of the glide system. And this is the I Ching, the hexagrams of the I Ching. The I Ching is also called the Book of Changes. And it's really about change and transformation and how to navigate it and the flow of change that goes through any given human situation. So this is an animation of the actual changing of the sequence of the King-Wen put against, and so that has 64 changes in it. It's a binary system. And the glide system has 729 changes in it when you make hexagrams out of them and transform them, because it's a ternary system. It's made out of 3 strokes rather than 2. And there's a lot of interesting scientific speculation on and work on ternary systems as opposed to binary systems. Dennis and Terence McKenna, Time Wave Zero and Beyond. That actually is the cascade at La Chorrera, so you can see the happy hippies playing in the water. And there's the Time Wave Zero interface. And of course, there's been a great deal said about the system, and it doesn't mean what Terence McKenna thinks it does, which I kind of tend to agree with, but I think it's also been, I believe it's a divination system, just like the I Ching, and workable as such and usable as such. This is another drawing. This is that King-Wen sequence, then flipped and twisted, makes a spiral wave, and comes back on itself. And this is just a diagram I made for the book. Terence McKenna talked often about totality symbols, and he had many different things that were for him metaphors of totality. You know, the concrescence, the eschaton, the singularity, the flying saucer as a roving lenticular being, the philosopher's stone, etc. It all came together for him. And here we have J.W.A. Tucker, otherwise known as Jason. Jason, are you here, Jason? Okay. And his work is, he calls it actual contact. So here's what he has to say about that. The act of drawing. First, let me just show you. This is one of his early drawings, and then he began to move into this. The act of drawing became not only an act of creation, but an act of participation. Looking down at a blank piece of paper, I would think, and then think of nothing, and then begin to draw, concentrating only on the beauty of the line, focusing on the movement, the symmetry, the vibration of just the line. I have often sensed that the same amount of concentration and surrender is happening on the other side of the line, as if another is on the other side, drawing the same image at the same time. A fantastical projection from the unconscious, as well as a magical conjuring of something spiritual in nature. In a primitive sense, each drawing is an attempt to commune with the spirit world just beyond the cave walls. I was entranced by a narrative that was developing in my drawings from one day to the next. I definitely connected them as a new exploratory language, but it wasn't very clear, the message. I found the images to be disorienting, kind of familiar, but not explanatory.